All right, so if you look at this question right here, you're going to do power over root. So I'm going to start with doing the cube root of everything that I see here. So I know that negative 48 is not a perfect cube, so I'm going to break that down. And I'm going to break that down to the cube root of negative 8 and the cube root of 6. Okay, because I know the cube root of negative 8 is a perfect cube. Okay, and negative 8 times 6 is negative 48. Then I'm going to do the cube root of x to the 12th. Okay, and then underneath here, I'm going to do the cube root. Now I know y to the 7th isn't a perfect cube, but I know that y to the 6th is. So I'm going to do that, y to the 6th, and then y to the 1st. Okay, so I'm just addressing the cube root right now. I'm not squaring yet. I'll deal with that in a minute. So after I'm done with, simplifying the inside here, then I'm going to square that. Okay, all right, so let's go through and cube root everything that I can. So I know the cube root of negative 8 is negative 2. And I know the cube root of x to the 12th is x to the 4th, so I'm going to put that there. Okay, now I am left with, in the numerator, the cube root of 6, because that's not a perfect cube. All right, in the denominator, then I've got y to the 2nd, and then I've got the cube root of y. Okay, and again, that entire thing is going to be squared. Okay, all right, now, what I'm going to now do is I'm going to square everything that I have inside these parentheses here. Okay, so if you look right over here, okay, I'm going to square this, and then I'm going to square this. Okay, I'll just start with the numerator. All right, so let's go back to that, and then I am going to get, let's see, I'm going to do negative 2x to the 4th. I'll square that, and then I'm going to square the cube root of 6 as well. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. So I'm going to square y squared, and then I'm going to square the cube root of y. Okay? All right. So when I square negative 2x to the 4th, I'm going to get a positive 4x to the 8th. Remember, power to a power means that you multiply. Okay. Then, if you look over here, hold on a second, let me get my little pointer thing going here. Okay, if you look over here, this is like writing the cube root of radical 6 2 times. Okay, so that's like writing the cube root of radical 6 times the cube root of radical 6, right? Okay, when something's squared, you write it twice. All right, so then let's look at I'll deal with that in a second. Let's look at y to the 2nd in the denominator. When I square that, that's y to the 4th. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the cube root of y. So I'm going to write the cube root of y times the cube root of y. Okay, almost done. And this is a really funky question, by the way. All right, so then we've got 4x to the 8th. Now, remember when you have any root, and it's the same root, what you can do is just multiply the numbers underneath. So 6 times 6 is 36. I'm going to do the same thing down here. So I'm going to have y to the 4th, bring that down, and then here we go again. So y times y is y squared. Okay, and as ugly and as disgusting as that is answer choice 2. All right, so let's look at number 3. So the problem is talking about an increase of 4.9%. So if it's an increase, then we know that that's going to be 1 plus 0.049, right? Which is going to give me 1.049. And they're saying over the previous year, so I'm going to put that to the t power. All right, now let's just read this carefully, because this is one of the ones that you were having trouble with. If this trend were to continue, sorry, which expression could the company's Chief Financial Officer used to approximate their quarterly percent increase. Okay, now look at your 4 choices. You have a conversion here because the very first sentence says over the previous year. So I'm using T to represent years. But if you look at your 4 choices, all your 4 choices are not in terms of years, they're in terms of quarters. It says it in the parentheses at the end of the problem. So this is the one where there's a time conversion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take that 1.049 and I'm going to convert it. And quarters means once every 3 months or 4 times a year. So that would be, the conversion would be Q over 4. Remember that? Okay, these 2 things mean the same thing. They are equivalent to one another. One is represented in years, that second one, okay? And then the third one here is represented in quarters. And that's how they want the answer to be, in quarters. All right, so now remember, there's a 1 here. So the coefficient of this Q is 1/4. So then what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to bring in that 1/4 in here, like that. It's a power, and keep the Q on the outside. Okay? And again, because I'm doing a time conversion. And now all I have to do is do this in my calculator, 1.049 to the 1/4, and I get 1.012 to the Q power, which is choice 1. All right, well, obviously you love these questions because number 4 is the same as number 3. Now we have a decrease over the previous year, so that will be 1 minus 0.0625. And it says over the previous year, so I'm using T to represent years. Now when I subtract those 2, I'm going to get 0.9375, okay, to the T. Now, if we read the rest of the problem, it says, assuming this trend continues, which expression could the company use to approximate the percent decrease in revenue through a certain number of months? They just changed your units of time. At the beginning, we started with years. Now we're into months. Look at the 4 choices. None of them say T. None of them represent years. They're all in terms of months. So that's a time conversion. So again, if it's a time conversion, in this case we're doing months, then we know that's months divided by 12. Again, remember, Sid, these are equal. Okay, now remember that the coefficient in front of the M is technically a 1, so that would make that 1/12. So I can bring that 1/12 inside like that and keep the M on the outside and do this in my calculator, and I'm going to get 0.9946. And that's to the M power, and that's choice 1. Okay? All right, so for number 6, they give you the formula, so that's a formula that you need to use. If you read part A, it's saying that she wants to determine her mortgage payment. And then if you go back and read the original question, in the very first sentence, it says the formula to compute a mortgage payment, M, is. So then in part A, what they're asking you to find is M. Okay, then it says the P stands for what? The principal amount on the loan. Okay, now principal amount means how much you're purchasing the house for. Now you're purchasing the house for $485,000. However, you got to be a little careful here because if you read in part A, it says with a 20% down payment. So what that means is the people buying the house have some money in the bank and they're going to put it toward that $485,000. So that way they don't pay as much interest, so it's a little bit cheaper for them. So what you want to do is you want to start by doing 20%, so 0.20, you're going to do this in your calculator, okay? I'm not going to write it down because it wastes space on my little board here. But 0.20 times the $485,000, okay? So if you do that, 0.20 times 485,000, you're going to get $97,000. So that's how much money they have saved to put toward the purchase price of the house, okay? So that $97,000 is, less money that they have to take out a loan for. So what I did was I take $485,000 minus the $97,000. And basically they're saying to the bank, guess what? I only need to take out $388,000, okay? Because we have money to put down. All right, so that's what we call the principal then. That's how much they're taking out the loan for. Now, if you read the rest of the question, and this is above Part A, let's see, last sentence above Part A, it says Bank of America currently offers a monthly interest rate of 0.42%, so that would be 0.0042, and a 30-year mortgage, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go like this. I'm going to open up a set of parentheses, and we have in the numerator, we have the R, which would be 0.0042. Okay, times 1 plus the R again, 0.0042. All right, now N. N in the second line down above Part A, it says N is the number of monthly payments. Well, it's a 30-year mortgage, and there's 12 months in a year, so just do 30 times 12, and that's going to be 360. Okay, so this is to the 360th power. And then in the denominator, I do 1 plus 0.0042 to the 360th power minus 1. Let's just do this. Those are parentheses. Aren't those pretty? Okay, and this is still a 1 here. All right, now, I know you're like the calculator genius, so you could just put this all in your calculator. And I'm just going to tell you because I have the archaic calculator at home, so I wasn't able to put it all in my calculator at once. I know that this whole mess, when you throw it all, numerator and denominator, in your calculator, it's 0.005396, just in case you put it all into your calculator at once and you don't get the same thing I do. So that's 2,092.3633. So basically what this is saying is that their mortgage payment monthly will be $2,092 because they said, I think it said to round to the nearest dollar, right? Okay. Okay, so sometimes what happens is, somebody can say, like when they're going to buy a home, well, I can't spend over $2,000 a month. Like I can't afford it. I know what my budget is, and that's as much as I can afford as a mortgage payment every month, which is basically what they're saying here, is Melissa doesn't want to go over spending $2,000 a month. So if the cost of the house is $485,000, she basically wants to know, like, well, if I want to keep my mortgage payment at $2,000 a month and the house costs $485,000, well, how much of a down payment then do I need? So basically, what you want to do is you want to try to say, well, the cost of the house is $485,000, right? And then if I subtract whatever my down payment is, I don't know what that is, okay? And then that'll give me the amount of money that I'm going to take out my loan for, okay? And then that amount of money, using this whole big formula, I will then only want to spend $2,000 a month. So if you go back to the original equation, basically what you're doing is you're telling the bank, I can only spend $2,000 a month. Okay, so P is the principal, which is the principal amount of the loan, but you really don't know what that is. But this is what we're going to use to represent it. Okay, because I know it's going to be $485,000 minus whatever my down payment is, and that's what we're trying to figure out. Okay, so here we go. So what you're going to do is, in for P, you're going to do $485,000 minus whatever my down payment is. Okay? And then that whole, I'm just going to bracket it, that whole big mess that we had from Part A. So that doesn't change because the interest rate is still going to be 0.42%. Okay, the formula is still 1 plus r, so 1 plus 0.0042. Okay, and it's still 30 years, so that's going to be 360 months, right? And then over, and then it's going to be 1 plus 0.0042, so 1 plus 0.0042. And that's going to be to the 360th power again, and that's going to be minus 1 and blah. Okay, so what's in these brackets is what you're going to multiply out. Now, I got that in part A. If you remember, I wrote that down, but I'll rewrite it for you. So it's $485,000, right, minus X. And when I put all of that in my archaic calculator, I got 0.0053, and I'm just going to go out further, 9268. Okay, I know that's a lot of extra decimals, but so basically I'm trying to get X by itself, so I'm going to divide out that disgusting decimal 0.0539 blah blah blah. Okay, same thing over here, blah blah blah, cross that out, and when I divide that I get 370,872.4839, and that's going to be equal to 485,000 minus X. All right, I know you'd love to show every single step, but I'm running out of room here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to subtract this over to there, and I'm going to add this X over to there. Sorry. You'll have to deal with that. So X is going to be equal to 114,127.5161. And then they wanted this to the nearest dollar. So $114,128. So what this is saying is that's the amount of money that she needs to come up with for a down payment. So she's going to give that amount of money to the bank that's giving her this loan and say, okay, I have $114,128, subtract that from the $485,000, and boom, that's how much I want to take the loan out, because if I do that, then I know my payments won't exceed the $2,000. Oh, happy joy. Okay, this one's a quick one. So if you look at f of x, it's just radical x. And then you can see that with g of x, we have a negative in front there. So that one is a reflection over the x-axis. Okay, so you have a reflection over the x-axis, okay, whenever there's a negative in front. And then this x plus 6 really is kind of like it's in parentheses because it's underneath the square root. So when something's in parentheses, that's a shift, and that's a shift left or right. Okay, and if you remember, it's a shift in the opposite direction of the sign. So in this case, we have a shift left 6 units. Okay, so we're shifting left 6 units. We're reflecting over the x-axis, choice 3. Okay, 10's the same exact thing. So the number that's inside the parentheses, x plus 5, you go in the opposite direction of that, and it's always a left-right shift. So in this case, it's going to be left 5 units, and then the number at the end is not inside parentheses, so that's an up-down shift, and it's exactly what the sign is saying. So that's going to be down 14 units. All right, number 12. I'm kind of surprised you can't do this one. Come on now, kiddo. You're going to double distribute that x plus 2. Okay, because when something's squared, you write it twice. And then over here, I'm going to just distribute. So that's going to be plus 2x plus 4. Bring down the minus 8. I'm going to distribute on the right side there, so that's going to be x squared plus 6x. And they're just, if you read the question, it says which one has been rewritten correctly to form a true statement. So I'm going to keep going on the left here. So I get x squared plus 4x plus 4 plus 2x plus 4 minus 8 equals x squared plus 6x. So I just want to see if it's the same. Well, I've got x squared, then I've got plus 4x and a plus 2x, so that's plus 6x. And then I've got, let me use my little pointer here, plus 4, that's plus 8, but then I have minus 8. So that's no good. So they're gone, right? So that's going to be equivalent. So choice 1. All right, 14, zeros. Hello? Just take the polynomial and set it equal to 0. So you're going to have to factor that. Okay, so x squared and x squared. And you figure out what adds to negative 14 and multiplies to negative 72. Now listen, if you know how to do this, turn me off, do it, and then turn it back on and check it, okay? So that would be negative 18 and positive 4. And then we have to set these equal to 0. Now this doesn't come out very nicely, but it's still good. You're going to get your sister serenading you in the background with violin. All right, so we've got x squared is equal to 18. I'm going to take the square root of that. Now remember, when you take the square root, though, you need plus or minus. Okay, and I can't leave it like that. I need to break that down. So that's going to be plus or minus 3 radical 2. So there's 2 zeros. Over here, I'm going to get x squared equals negative 4. So x is equal to, and again, I'm going to take the square root, so I need plus or minus square root of negative 4. Now remember, when we take the square root of a negative, that's just really an I. Okay, so we're taking the square root of 4, which is 2, and then we stick an I next to it. So there's 2 more zeros. So you have 4 zeros altogether. You have the 2 over here, you have a positive 3 radical 2 and a negative 3 radical 2. And then you have 2 over here. You have the positive 2i and then the negative 2i. Okay? All right, now with this one, again, if you know how to do this, turn me off, do it, and then turn it back on and check your answer, because I think you're going to laugh at yourself with this one. They want to know what the zeros are. You can't factor this. I mean, you can try to group it, but it's not going to work, because if you like group here, you would take out an x. Here, you would just take out a negative 1, and your parentheses don't match up. But do you remember that you have a calculator? So you can take this and put it in your y1 and just look at the picture. And zeros are where they hit the x-axis. Silly pants. All right, so anyway. And I knew people were going to forget that, so don't feel alone with that one. So x equals negative 4. When I plug it into my y1 and I graph it, x equals negative 1, and x equals 3. Okay, now if you want to get fancy, you can write them like negative 4, negative 1, and 3, but those are your zeros. All right, now with number 16, if they're telling you that one of the factors is x plus 2, then that's got to mean that x equals negative 2 is one of the zeros, right? So if that's the case, kind of do like what I said for you to do on number 15. I go through each one of those choices and put it in my y1 and see which of those graphs hits the x-axis at x equals negative 2. Okay, so that's what I did. I took choice 1, I put it in my y1, and it did not work. It didn't hit the x-axis at x equals negative 2. I did the same thing. Okay, keep going. It's choice 4. All right, so again, Sydney, at any point in time, if you remember what to do because I sparked something in your head, turn me off. Okay, so we're doing a parabola, right? So the best thing to do, honestly, is to draw a picture. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So my focus is here at negative 4, 4, and the directrix is x equals 2. So I'm just going to dot it so you can see it better. Okay, so there's the directrix. So what that means is, I don't know if you remember, is here they've just inadvertently given us the p-value, and that's the distance between those two things. So that's a distance of 6. So our p, I'm going to write it over here, I know is 6. Now, that means the vertex of our parabola has to be in the middle of that. Okay? So I'm just trying to get a different color here. All right, so that means in the middle of 6 would be 3. So I'm going to go, here I go, I'm starting here, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 back. So right here would be where my vertex is. Okay, so then my vertex is going to be right there. And my parabola always has to turn away from the directrix. So my parabola is going to go in that direction. All right? All right. So then that means that my vertex has coordinates -1, 4. And now I can write the equation. Okay, so look at it. It's opening to the left. So if anything is ever opening to the left, that's an x equals. And my 1 over 2p is going to be negative because it's opening to the left. Okay, and if it's x equals there, then it's y minus k here, and then plus h there. All right, so let's do this. -1 over, now 2p, so that's going to be 12. Okay, so let me go into this just a little bit more because I know I went through it kind of fast. Let me point. So if we look here, this is giving you the y value of the vertex, that would be this, but we're going to negate it. So since this currently is a +4, when I plop it in here, it's going to make that a -4. Okay, so then I'm going to have y minus 4 in there. Good so far? Okay, and then lastly, then when I look here, okay, plus h, since this is a y here, then the value that goes here is also a y value. If this were an x, then the value that goes here is an x. But this is a y, so that's a y, which then means here's my x value right out here. Now I go look, my x value is -1. I don't change the sign. So this is a -1, so this is going to be a -1. The only time we change the sign is when it's inside parentheses. Okay, so I'm going to have a -1 right here, which means I need to make that a -1. There you go. That's the equation. All right, now with number 18, it's kind of similar, except that it gave you the equation. So do you remember that when you have the equation, what you want to try to do is get the thing that's not squared by itself. So then I'm going to divide out that -10. Okay, so then I have y plus 2 equals -1/10 x plus 5, that quantity squared. Okay, next I'm going to get the y by itself, so I'm going to move that 2 over. Okay, and when I move that 2 over, that's going to make that -2. So there we go. So that's the equation of the parabola. Now we have to kind of figure out, you know, what this thing looks like. All right, well, let's remember, if you recall right here, this is 2p. So that means that your p has to be 5, right? Okay. All right, next thing we have to look at is in here. So we have an x in here. Remember I said in the last question we have to change the sign here to get the x coordinate of the vertex. So what that means then is if I'm doing the coordinates of the vertex, that would be a -5 for the x value. Okay, and then I can just look down here, because if this corresponds to the x value, this corresponds to the y value. But remember, we don't change the sign here. So then all we have to say then is that the vertex would have coordinates of -5, -2. Okay, now I personally, this is not what they asked, by the way. They want the focus in the directrix. But I personally would suggest, and I do suggest to my students, to draw a picture. So if you draw a picture, let's do this. We're going to the left 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and down 2. All right, so there's the vertex. And then, let's see. Oh, okay, well, I know that because it's a y equals, it's going to open up or down. And because the fraction is negative, it's actually going to open down. Okay, so then when I want to draw the picture, I know that my parabola is going to go like that. Now, the P is 5. So what this tells me is the distance from the focus to the directrix is 5. So that means when I go over here, my vertex is right here. My directrix will be up the same amount as my focus will be down. And the distance between those two has to be 5. So I'm going to go down 2.5 and I'm going to go up 2.5. Okay? All right. So if I'm at -2 and I go up 2.5, let me do this in a different color and just give me a second because, okay. So then that means that my line would be right here at y equals 0.5. You see that? And then if I go down 2.5, 1, 2.5, that means my focus will be right there. And that focus is at -5, comma, -4.5. Okay, and then the directrix is at y equals 0.5. And that is what they wanted. Alrighty, here we go. I'm getting tired, Sydney. You need a common denominator. So I'm going to put this 1 over 1. So that means this denominator needs to get multiplied by x, and so does the numerator. This middle one needs an x and an x plus 7. Okay, and then at the end here, I only need an x plus 7, top and bottom. Now it's an equation. So once you have that all lined up, look, all the denominators are now the same, and you've changed all the numerators. Remember, we can just cross out the denominator, okay? Alrighty, now, let me go back to my red pen. All right, so I'm just going to distribute everything. So I get 3x squared plus 25x. You need to be very careful right here because this negative needs to get distributed to everything inside here as well. Okay, so just be a little careful with that. So that's going to give me negative 5x squared minus 35x equals, and then I'm going to have 3x plus 21. Okay, now all you're going to do is just combine your like terms. So blah, 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 blah. You can shut me off and do it if you want, but I get 2x squared plus 13x plus 21 equals 0. Now really, at this point, it's your choice. You can do rainbow and factor, or you can do the quadratic formula. Okay, it really doesn't matter. I did quadratic formula. So if you want to factor, shut me off, factor. You'll get the same thing as I get if I do quadratic formula. Okay, or shut me off and do the quadratic formula. All right, so I get negative 13 plus or minus, when all is said and done, square root of 1 all over 4. So I'm going to split that up. So x equals negative 13 plus 1 over 4. And then on the other side, x equals negative 13 minus 1 all over 4. Okay, so then on the left here, I end up with negative 3. So there's one solution. And then over here, I end up with negative 14 over 4, which is negative 7/2. All right? Okay, listen, I'm tired. So 20 is the same exact thing as number 19. Find a common denominator, cross the denominators off, take your numerators, distribute things, and you can either factor or do the quadratic formula. I think that one you're going to have to do the quadratic formula. I don't think it factors. Just watch out for that 3 minus x in the middle, okay, because you want to turn that around and make that x minus 3, and if you do that, then you need to turn that plus sign in between the 5x and 3x into a minus sign. Okay? Good luck. Love you. Talk to you later. Bye. Oh, and you're welcome very, very, very much. Love you.